The rain fell like the sky itself was grieving, and I stood between two caskets, my parents, trying to understand how everything in my life had shattered in a single day. My name is Elizabeth Wheeler. Just hours after burying the only family I had, my husband looked me in the eye and said 5 words that changed everything. I'm leaving you, Elizabeth. No comfort, no explanation, just a cold, calculated exit. But what he didn't know was that his betrayal would become the beginning of my transformation. Because in losing everything, I uncovered a truth he never wanted me to find. I thought grief would be the hardest part, navigating a world without my parents. But it turned out grief was just the opening act. The real blow came moments later, standing beside their graves, drenched in rain, when Michael, my husband of 8 years, turned to me with the kind of detached calm you'd expect from a stranger. I'm leaving you, Elizabeth, he said. At first, I didn't process it. I thought maybe he was in shock too, that he meant we needed space, time to grieve separately. But no. He clarified with surgical precision, repeating himself, slower this time. I'm leaving you. He didn't wait for questions. He delivered his lines like he'd rehearsed them. You're broke now. Your parents didn't leave you anything. They were bankrupt. Everything's gone. It felt like the world tilted beneath me. Bankrupt? My father ran a publishing company. My mother came from old money. We weren't lavish spenders, but we lived well. Michael and I had traveled the world. We lived in a penthouse, designer clothes, charity galas, fine dining. It had always been our normal. And now, nothing? You really thought your dad's little publishing company was thriving? Michael continued. They've been sinking for years. Everything they had left went into keeping up appearances. For you. The vacations, the shopping, the car you just had to have, it was all on credit. His words hit harder than the rain. Then he twisted the knife. The penthouse, it's in my name. I've already called a lawyer. You have until the end of the week to move out. I stood frozen, not crying, not screaming, just numb. I wasn't just grieving my parents. I was realizing the man I loved, the man I trusted, had been wearing a mask for years. The warmth I once saw in his eyes was gone, replaced by a kind of ruthless satisfaction. I managed to choke out, "Why are you doing this?" His smile was thin, cruel. "Because I don't need you anymore."
He walked away, leaving me between two caskets, the rain masking the tears I didn't even realize were falling. And I let him go. I didn't beg. I didn't chase after him. Something deep inside me had already broken. And in that silence, I started to feel something else, something sharp, burning just beneath the grief. That night, I returned to what was no longer my home. The penthouse felt cold, foreign, like a museum of a life that no longer belonged to me. Michael was already packing up his things. I watched him from the hallway. "When did you stop loving me?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. 8 years. 8 years of my life spent loving a man who only loved what I could give him. Money, status, access. I wasn't a wife to him. I was a business opportunity.
I slept in the guest room that night. And in the morning, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just Elizabeth Barrett, discarded wife. I was Elizabeth Wheeler, daughter of Jonathan and Miriam Wheeler, and Michael hadn't taken everything. I didn't have a plan when I left the penthouse. Just a bag of clothes, my mother's old jewelry, and a laptop Michael had given me one Christmas. Ironic, in hindsight. I scrolled through my contacts, but most of the names staring back at me weren't really my friends. They were our friends. Couples who would no doubt side with Michael once the story reached them. People who loved fancy dinners and well-manicured lies. And then I saw her name, Olivia Chen, my college roommate. The one person Michael had never liked, said she was too intense, which I now realized was code for too smart to fool. We hadn't spoken in years, just the occasional comment on social media or a holiday card, but I didn't hesitate. I pressed call.
She answered on the third ring. Elizabeth? Her voice was warm, real, like a memory I'd forgotten I missed. I heard about your parents. I'm so sorry. That simple kindness undid me. Olivia, my voice cracked. I need help. 2 hours later, I was in her small Brooklyn apartment, sitting on a second-hand couch clutching a mug of tea. Everything around me was modest, a far cry from the penthouse I'd just left. But it felt more like home than anywhere I'd been in years. I told her everything. My parents' deaths. Michael's cold abandonment. The revelation that I was broke, cast aside like expired stock in one of his carefully managed portfolios. Olivia listened, quiet, but focused. And when I was done, she didn't pity me. She got mad. What an absolute bastard, she muttered. At your parents' funeral? There's a special place in hell for people like him. I don't know what to do, I admitted. I have no job, no income, no idea who I am outside of being Michael Barrett's wife. That's not true, she said firmly. You have an English literature degree from Columbia. You're smart. You just got stuck in a life where you weren't allowed to use it. I laughed weakly. The only thing I've used that degree for is reorganizing the classics section in our home library. Then maybe it's time to dust it off. She leaned forward. Look, I might have something for you. It's not glamorous, and the pay is, well, pathetic. But it's a start. A job? My agency's looking for an assistant. You'd be making coffee, organizing manuscripts, managing calendars. But it's a foot in the door, and you already know this world better than you think. I blinked at her, stunned. In less than a day, I had lost everything that once defined me. And now, here was this woman, this friend, offering a way forward. Do you really think I can do it? I know you can, she said, smiling. This isn't the end, Elizabeth. It's the start of something new. You've been forged in fire. That night, in her spare bedroom surrounded by boxes and framed literary posters, I allowed myself to cry. For my parents, my marriage, and the woman I used to be. By morning, my tears had dried, leaving behind something I hadn't felt in days. Clarity. Michael thought he left me with nothing. He was wrong. The message came just after sunrise. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Barrett, this is Gregory Finch, your parents' attorney. There are urgent matters concerning their estate that require your attention. Please contact me as soon as possible. I sat up in Olivia's spare bed, my heart pounding. What could possibly be left to discuss? Michael had made it clear. My parents were broke. Their assets gone. Unless he lied about that too. I didn't wait. I dialed the number with shaking hands. Miss Wheeler, Finch answered, his voice measured but not unkind. Thank you for calling. It's Barrett. For now, I replied quietly. But not for long. I understand, he said. Can you come to my office today? There are things we need to discuss in person, and I should warn you, what I'm about to share may change everything you think you know. An hour later, I stepped off the elevator into the law offices of Finch & Associates, tucked high above Manhattan. Less than a week ago, I would have walked in confidently, dressed in designer heels and tailored black. Now I was running on adrenaline and grief, wearing wrinkled clothes and borrowed hope. He was rejecting profitable manuscripts, Finch explained, driving out key editors, mismanaging budgets, slowly strangling the company from within. I stared at the evidence, rage and disbelief mixing like oil and fire. But why? Why destroy the company if he wanted to take it over? Finch leaned forward. Because of the back catalog. Wheeler Publishing owns the rights to hundreds of titles. Properly leveraged, those rights could be worth millions, more than the company's current value. I gripped the edge of the desk. Michael said my parents were bankrupt, that there was nothing left. Finch's lips tightened. Mr. Barrett only knew what your parents allowed him to know. They began transferring assets out of reach. Real estate, tech investments, silent partnerships. Your family's worth is substantial. How substantial? I asked, bracing myself. Approximately $12 million. I went still. 12 million. Michael had left me because he thought I was worthless. I'm not broke, I whispered. No, Finch said. And you're not powerless either. You are the sole heir. The company, the assets, the rights, they're all yours. I should have felt relief, but I didn't. I felt something colder, stronger. Michael thought he'd discarded me. He had no idea what he'd unleashed. I left Finch's office clutching the manila folders and a small key he'd handed me before I walked out. This opens a safety deposit box, he said. Your parents left specific instructions. Whatever's inside, they wanted only you to see it. The vault at First Manhattan Bank was cold and silent, the kind of place that seemed designed to hold secrets. A manager led me into a private viewing room and left me alone with the box. Inside were 3 things: a sealed envelope with my name in my father's handwriting, a USB drive tucked inside a padded case, and a small leather-bound journal that I instantly recognized as my mother's. I opened the letter first, hands trembling. My dearest Elizabeth, if you're reading this, then we're gone, or worse, in hiding. We discovered things about Michael we never wanted to believe. He isn't who you think he is. This man has spent years undermining the company, manipulating you, and playing both sides. We couldn't confront him without putting you in danger, so we gathered evidence. The USB contains everything. Use it wisely. Trust Gregory Finch. Trust Olivia. But most of all, trust yourself. You are stronger than you've been led to believe. With all our love, Dad and Mom. I clutched the letter to my chest, blinking back tears. They had known. They had seen through the man I had devoted 8 years to, and they had been working behind the scenes to protect me, even as I stood blind beside him. The journal and USB would have to wait until I had time to fully digest them, but I couldn't shake the urgency in their letter. I needed answers. I needed to hear the truth. Olivia cleared her schedule the moment I called. She didn't ask questions, just opened her laptop and slid it across the table. Let's see what's on the drive, she said. What we found made my skin crawl. There were dozens of audio files, each labeled by date. We clicked the most recent one, recorded 2 weeks before my parents' accident. Michael's voice was unmistakable. They're starting to ask questions, he said. Jonathan's digging into the manuscripts I had rejected. We need to accelerate the plan. Another voice responded, deep and composed. We agreed on 2 more years, controlled decline, then bankruptcy, then acquisition. Michael snapped back. I don't have 2 more years. I've wasted enough time playing house with their daughter. My stomach turned. I could barely breathe. We played more. In one, Michael boasted about keeping Wheeler afloat just long enough to get the catalog rights. In another, he laughed, saying, She doesn't suspect a thing. She still thinks I married her because I loved her. Then, the one that stopped everything. If they don't stop asking questions, maybe it's time for something more permanent. I paused the audio. Silence buzzed in my ears. Olivia looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. Elizabeth, she whispered, you need to take this to the police, now. I shook my head. Not yet. This is suspicious, not solid proof. He'll deny it, say it's out of context. We need something indisputable. Olivia's voice was firm. What are you thinking? I stared at the screen. My hands stopped shaking. I'm thinking he doesn't know I know. He thinks I'm still broken, powerless, alone. I looked up at her, fire finally replacing fear. So let's keep it that way. I knew exactly what I needed to do and exactly who Michael still believed I was. A woman wrecked by grief. A wife discarded and too fragile to think clearly. An obstacle he had already erased from the board. That would be my greatest weapon. Olivia and I worked late into the night, laying out every piece of evidence we had like a war map. Audio recordings, financial records, photos from the private investigator, and a growing suspicion that my parents' accident had been anything but. "This is enough to make him sweat," Olivia said, pointing at the folders. "But we still don't know who he's working with behind the scenes." Then we let him show us. The plan was simple. I would meet with Michael, play the part, broken, lost, grasping for closure. Meanwhile, Olivia would wait nearby and follow him when he left, see who he met, where he went. If he was working with someone bigger, someone more powerful, we needed to know. Michael texted me first. Of course he did. "I need the blue file from my office. Bring it to the Waldorf tomorrow, 3 p.m. Don't be late. Don't." No, please. No, how are you holding up? Just a command. Like I still belonged to him. I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. "Of course. I'll be there." The next day, I dressed carefully. No makeup. Same clothes I'd worn leaving the penthouse. Hair in a loose, unwashed ponytail. I looked like a woman who hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, like someone spiraling. I walked into the Waldorf's grand lobby with the file tucked under my arm and my pulse pounding in my ears. "There you are," Michael said, striding toward me from the bar. He looked crisp, confident, expensive. His eyes skimmed over me, judging, calculating, and found exactly what he expected: a defeated, dependent wife. I gave him a broken smile and handed him the file. "Let's sit." He didn't thank me. He didn't ask how I was. He just opened the file and flipped through it like we were discussing business over brunch. "I know things ended abruptly between us," he said, his voice smooth. "You left me at my parents' funeral," I said softly. He didn't even flinch. I was honest. The money's gone. There's nothing left to stay for. I let tears well up in my eyes. "I don't know what to do. I'm staying with Olivia. I don't even know how to be on my own." He offered a shrug and the faintest smirk. "You'll land on your feet. You always had a knack for getting what you want." He stood, tucking the file into his briefcase. "Take care of yourself." And then he was gone. I stayed seated, counting to 30. Then I texted Olivia. "He's leaving. Go." She was already across the street, watching from her car. As Michael stepped into a black Audi and pulled away, she followed. I stepped outside into the cool air, the shaking in my hands finally subsiding. It had worked. He still believed I was shattered. But this time, he wasn't the one holding the cards. 15 minutes later, Olivia texted back. He just entered a brownstone on the Upper East Side. Not alone. One of the men, Victor Harrington. My blood ran cold. Victor Harrington, CEO of Pinnacle Media Group, the same man who had tried to buy Wheeler Publishing 3 years ago, and who my father had once called a corporate vulture with blood on his teeth. "Take photos," I texted. "Don't lose them." Because now I knew Michael wasn't just a liar. He was part of something bigger. Michael had made a fatal mistake. He led us straight to the heart of his operation. Olivia's photos showed him walking into the Upper East Side brownstone, greeted at the door by none other than Victor Harrington, a name my father had once uttered with disdain. Harrington didn't just buy publishing companies, he gutted them, sold off assets, fired staff, and erased legacies. Now, he was in business with my husband. And that brownstone wasn't just a meeting spot. It was a battlefield. I was still staring at the images on Olivia's phone when she asked, "Who exactly is Harrington to your family?" "He tried to acquire Wheeler Publishing 3 years ago," I replied, my voice tight. "My father turned him down, said he didn't care about books, only about leverage and licensing rights." It made sense now. Michael hadn't just wanted my family's company. He'd wanted it as a gift, a trophy to deliver to Pinnacle Media, to Victor. That night, we reviewed everything we had, again. The recordings, the letters, the financials. But it still wasn't enough to prove murder. Suspicion? Sure. Motive? Absolutely. But a courtroom wouldn't care what we suspected. They'd need hard evidence. Then Olivia had an idea. What about the mechanic? The one who worked on your father's car? My eyes widened. The name had been in the folder Finch gave me. I dug it out. Thomas Reed, Reed's Auto Garage, Queens. He worked on the car 3 days before the crash. It was listed as routine maintenance. But if Michael had tampered with the brakes, or had someone else do it, Reed might know. Maybe even more. Olivia wasn't convinced I should go. What if Michael has him in his pocket? Or worse, what if he's involved? I won't go alone, I promised. We need help. That's when Olivia called in a favor. Jack Donovan, a former client of hers. A retired NYPD detective turned crime author with more experience in dirty dealings than either of us could imagine. 2 days later, we met Jack in her apartment. He listened, stone-faced, as we laid it all out. When we finished, he said just one thing. I'll talk to Reed, alone. You two stay out of it. And we agreed. Except the next morning, everything changed. Jack texted us a single message. We need to meet. Reed's dead. It's worse than we thought. My stomach dropped. We met Jack at a diner in Midtown, and his face said it all. Grim, pale, tight-jawed. Carbon monoxide poisoning, he said quietly. In his own garage. Called in as a suicide. No, I whispered, heart racing. He was just a mechanic. Why would... Because he talked to me, Jack interrupted. Told me he was paid $5,000 to miss something during the inspection. Said he didn't know what it was, just that the guy wanted the brake lines untouched, left exactly as they were. And he did it? Olivia asked. Jack nodded. Felt guilty after the crash. Said he'd been meaning to go to the police, but he was afraid. Afraid of who? I asked. Jack pulled a small envelope from his jacket. Inside were photos, grainy, black and white, printed from security footage. One showed Reed crouched beside my father's car. The second? The same car, hours later, with a noticeable fray in the brake line. Reed kept these as insurance, Jack said. He gave them to me before I left. And now he's dead, Olivia whispered. The diner felt too small, too bright. My chest tightened. They killed him. Looks that way, which means they know we're getting close, and they won't stop. I stared out the window, city life blurring past, unaware that a storm was about to break. We need to move fast, I said, before someone else ends up dead. Because the deeper we went, the clearer it became. Michael wasn't just trying to steal my legacy. He was willing to kill for it. I always thought I knew everything about my family, their habits, their history, even their secrets. But it turns out the people I trusted most were carrying a truth so massive, so buried, it could only live off the grid. That truth started with Patricia Winters, my father's loyal executive assistant. When I visited Wheeler Publishing under the guise of tying up loose ends, Patricia pulled me into a side office with urgency written all over her face. Your father had a backup drive, she whispered. A fail-safe. I blinked. Michael already wiped his office computer. I know. That's why he made sure to keep a physical backup, she said, eyes scanning the hallway. He hid it in the third drawer of his study, at the lake house. I froze. The lake house was sold. They downsized. Patricia shook her head. Not exactly. It was never in the company's name, never tied to their personal accounts. He kept it hidden, in case things ever got dangerous. That was the moment I realized. My father had been preparing for war, and he didn't even trust his own daughter to know. Patricia handed me a ring of keys and slipped something into my palm. The address. Be careful, Elizabeth. and take someone with you. I did. Jack insisted on driving. Olivia packed a bag of essentials, and the three of us set off toward the Adirondacks like fugitives heading into battle. The lake house was 3 hours north, remote, off any grid, and so deeply buried in pines you could drive past it 100 times and never know it was there. The A-frame cabin stood stoic at the edge of a glassy lake, framed by towering trees and silence. It looked exactly how I remembered from childhood weekends, except now, it felt like a time capsule left behind by ghosts. Jack insisted on checking the perimeter first. When he gave the all clear, I led him down the hallway to my father's study. The room was dusty, untouched. I walked to the wooden credenza and dropped to my knees. Third drawer, false bottom, just like Patricia said. My fingers found the seam. A soft click, and there it was. A small external hard drive, sealed in plastic. Next to it, an envelope and a tiny digital voice recorder. Jack leaned over my shoulder. Jackpot. I grabbed everything and stuffed it into my bag, heart pounding. But just as we turned to leave, headlights, sweeping across the front windows. Jack moved like lightning. 2 men, black sedan. Stay quiet. Back door now. We slipped through the kitchen and out into the woods. Behind us, the front door exploded inward. Go, Jack barked, pushing me ahead. Get to the cabin. Olivia knows the way. Another voice, angry, male, shouted from inside. Then a shot. I screamed as Jack stumbled, clutching his side. I'm fine. Keep moving, he gasped, turning to cover me as I ran. The forest was a blur, branches slashing at my arms, breath tearing through my lungs. I didn't know how far I ran, only that I didn't stop until I saw a flicker of light between the trees. Olivia. She was waiting at Jack's off-grid cabin, flashlight in hand, eyes wide. What happened? They found us, I panted. Jack's hit. He told me to run. Olivia pulled me inside, locking the door behind us. She helped me sit, then noticed the bag clutched to my chest. You got it? I nodded, tears streaking my dirt-covered face. The drive, the envelope, the recorder. She looked at me with a mix of fear and awe. Elizabeth, what the hell is going on? I opened the envelope first. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A DNA test. 2 names I recognized. Jonathan and Miriam Wheeler. And a third I didn't. Michael Barrett. I stared at it, breath caught in my throat. What is this? Before Olivia could speak, a voice came from the doorway. We can explain. We turned, frozen. Standing there, alive, pale, and trembling, were my parents. If you've made it this far, I want to hear from you. What would you do in Elizabeth's shoes? Could you forgive a betrayal that deep? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you're hooked and want to see how this story unfolds, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a twist. There's so much more coming, and trust me, the next part will leave you speechless. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. It really helps the channel grow. Thanks for watching.